Warning, long text-to-speech ahead. English presentations were literally the one thing Kitty got F for in school, and it showed up when Kitty tried to record his. Sorry.
So, Kitty's back in action. She'd had a rough year of farming behind to gear up in Legendary for easier build testing in the future, thanks to Legendary Armory they added last year, and she's also had to farm all the End of Dragon stuffs quickly, though she's now done with those and able to focus on raiding again. Lately there's been lots of talk about builds, as quite many are running very inefficient builds, especially in the open world, and content is getting more demanding of a working build. Kitty would like to argue that lots of build problem is caused by people not understanding how the builds work in Guild Wars 2 due to how much more detailed and complicated its build system is compared to pretty much any other MMO in the market, at least among those Kitty's played. That is Guild Wars 2's blessing and curse. Such versatile system allows making ridiculous amounts of different builds. Thousands of them. Purpose-built to whatever the situation needs, as long as the builds have tools for them, which is kinda class-dependent. Stats, runes, sigils, weapons, traits, foods, utility skills. Choosing all of those are part of the buildcrafting process. To make a working build, those must work in harmony, complementing each other. Using stuffs with zero synergy usually results in a build that doesn't do damage, can't support nor sustain itself. Which is why there's a few questions to be asked when creating a build. 1. What do you need a build for? Soloing content or playing with others? To do big damage, CC, give boons or heal your allies? For solo build, you need to do all of those later mentioned things by yourself, thus requiring a balanced build to deal with all that. For squad content, each player often specializes in certain role in the group. Typically those roles are pure DPS and healer, who also doubles as boon support. Though DPS can also work as boon support, and now with all boons being 5 target, each 5-person group usually bring a healer who brings more boons, a DPSer who brings the missing boons, and 3 usually DPS players. As such, in squad content the target of the build is to be efficient in its role without delving too deeply into other roles at the same time if it'd compromise the efficiency in their primary role. And that usually results in purpose-built open-world solo build being horrible in squad content due to its jack-o'-all-trades nature. Meanwhile, squad DPS builds often work in solo open-world with just a few changes. The problem of specialized squad builds is that they just lack either in sustain or damage to kill things as efficiently and survive as well in open world, thus usually requiring more skill to play as solo. But as Kitty already mentioned, just a few trait and utility skill changes can completely remedy that. 2. How? How is the build supposed to work? Here we delve into the synergies. Generally weapons, utility skills and traits are split to 4 categories with some overlap, and each weapon works in certain category on each class, and even within a class, same weapon can be of different category if used in main or offhand. These categories are 1. Power DPS. 2. Condi DPS, same as damage over time in other games. 3. Utility. 4. Support. How do you recognize which category a weapon, trait or skill belongs to? Read what it says. If it just mentions damage, insert big number here, it's likely a power DPS skill and focuses on doing direct damage to boss, unless the tooltip states some extra information about what it does. Great Sword is great example of power weapon, as it doesn't do Condi on anything, excluding Condi Reaper, which is a chilling build for the chosen ones. If it has bunch of red icons and says something like burning, bleed, poison, torment, or confusion, it's very likely a Condi DPS skill, especially if the duration is longer than 1 to 2 seconds. Though one thing to note is that some traits have an interaction that makes skills apply lots of Condi damage despite skill itself saying nothing about that. This is especially true on Condi Guardian builds, Condi Reaper, if someone somehow plays it, and anything with Condi on crit trait in the build. Condi on crit can cause seemingly power weapons to do good Condi output if they have a high attack speed and build has high crit rate. NG's grenades are a good example of this when traded. Torches, pistols, shortbows and scepters very often have Condi skills. If it says something like block, knock, daze, shadow step, portal, or pull, yada yada yada, It's usually some sort of utility skill to block damage, CC the enemy, pull the enemies together for easy cleave, port the squad around, or to shadow step to faraway enemy. On a side note, shadow steps sometimes ignore line of sight and they teleport to target and are thus used for some skips if they have long range or to go through insta-kill walls safely. When it comes to CC, mace and hammer are usually strong weapons CC-wise, and shield pretty much always has blocks. Swords also tend to have shadow step on some skill. If it says healing and or has an orange icon in the tooltip, it's pretty certainly a support skill. Even better if it says to allies in the tooltip, as that's a sign of squad support skill. Cleanse conditions is also very desirable in a skill if there are lots of aforementioned conditions applied. Those orange things are boons and people are very happy to have them. Especially DP Sirs love might. Gotta give 25 total, fury, quickness and alacrity, as they usually give a big boost to DPS. Other boons like regeneration, protection, vigor, and such are more of defensive sort, which help supports to keep peoples alive. Protective boons are also good in solo open world to survive. Staves are usually a rather support-focused weapon, purely such on Revenant, Druid and Guardian. Elementalist has strong heals on staff, though Frostbow is even stronger, and Mirage does big alacrity and might by spamming dodge ambush. Warhorn is another support weapon as it does good boons, especially Fury and Swiftness, on every class it can be used on. Except on Necro, big sad. But that's just skills. Traits usually enhances those capabilities by extending condition durations, increasing strike, read, power, damage, making skills provide additional boons, increasing outgoing healing, adding Condi cleanse and increase certain stats. To figure out which does what among those, read through the traits carefully, compare them to skills for similar terms and figure out if the traits you choose do lots of similar stuff. If all the traits are about increasing strike damage, crit rate or plus power, precision, ferocity, they're power DPS specialized traits. Choosing them usually results in decent or good power DPS build. If all the traits are apply burn on crit, or when using this weapon's skills, increase burn duration, or increase Condi damage, you have a decent Condi DPS build. If you have stuff that say, increase outgoing healing, apply might, fury, quickness, alacrity to allies, cleanse conditions, or such, you have support build rolling. Reduce recharge on this weapons or type skills, are good if you have those equipped, as it allows you to use those skills more often. Usually specializations specialize in a role, but if the class only has one specific trait line per role, like Devastation for power and corruption for Condi on Revenant, you'll usually want to choose some second trait line that gives a generic bonus, like Invocation on Revenant. Some specializations have multiple trait lines that can be chosen for specific build type. This is especially common for elite specs, which usually have trait lines for 2 roles and a third utility trait line. A good example of specialization covering both power and Condi is Guardian's Radiance. For Condi, it boosts burning, and for power, it boosts damage and crit rate depending on traits you choose. But most of all, make sure those traits match what your weapons and utility skills do. Let's not forget the core of the build system: gears. Guild Wars 2's gear system is versatile. Extremely versatile. With stats you choose the general type of the build, and with runes and sigils you can greatly adjust the specifics of how a build works. And to choose stats, you need to pay attention to synergy and combinations. So, when you're going for a power DPS build, there's 3 stats to focus on. 1. Power, the base stat that determines the damage the skills do. Higher it goes, more damage you do. 2. Precision. Precision increases the critical hit rate, and this is of utmost importance to power builds as the critical hits have a huge damage bonus. Critical hit rate is capped at 100%, so make sure you don't go over that with the combination of gears and traits. 3. Ferocity. Ferocity boosts the critical hits to do over 2.5 times the damage non-crits would do. Plus 150% power damage boost compared to build with no precision. Or well, closer to 100% cause Fury exists. Anyway, if the gear piece you're using has those stats, that's the indication of a power DPS build. Once again, make sure you have power DPS traits and a weapon that focuses on power damage if you're using power DPS build. The prefixes with these traits are called Berserkers and Assassins, though there's also Diviners, which has concentration on top of aforementioned stats to increase the duration of boons you give. Diviners is good for power boon support builds. If you'd overcap crit rate with pure DPS traits and full Berserkers, you can weave in some Dragons or Valkyrie to replace precision with Vitality for more tankiness. Just don't drop crit rate much while using those. If you need a tankier power build for something like World vs. World, you can use a combination of Assassins and Valkyrie or Marauder and Dragons for extra vitality at the cost of damage, but this is a bad idea for squad content. For Condi DPS, you want condition damage and expertise. Condition damage, probably self-explanatory, increases the condition damage aka damage of stuff like burning and bleeding. Expertise increases condition duration, which basically doubles the Condi damage when capped at 100%. Though do note that you can increase condition duration with +% condition duration on runes. Nightmare runes is common used example, and with runes and sigils focused on specific condition like Balthazar runes and Smoldering Sigil giving burning duration. Also, some traits do have those condition duration bonuses, and if you have a trait line that gives 20% burning duration, Sigil with 20% burning duration and Balthazar runes for 50% burning duration, you're already at 90%, and in such case, it's usually beneficial to either go hybrid with Grieving stat combo or go all in with Condi damage by using Sinister stat combo. Though do note, power and Condi damage traits are often mutually exclusive due to how they're positioned in trait lines, and as such, you need to think carefully when trying to create a hybrid build. This also applies to DPS support hybrids, which are even harder to make work due to support traits usually having totally separate spec. But then, to supports. Healing power is pretty clear, more is more heals. To get more boon duration, you need to use gears that give concentration. 15 points of concentration equals to 1% of boon duration, and boon duration is capped at 100%. With stats alone, you usually won't reach that cap. But, just like Condi, you can get boon duration from traits, runes and sigil of concentration. If you reach the cap of 100% boon duration, it's a good idea to either use Sigil of Renewal or Water instead, or Magi's or Zealot's gearpiece. And to be clear, usually concentration is off from DPS stats while they're pretty much free stat for heal builds, and thus healers usually provide boons while at it. This is even more so due to heal skills usually having boons integrated, like with Guardian's Empower. And yes, Kitty's been referring to Guardian a lot since it's ArenaNet's golden child, and most of the people know Dragon Hunter and Firebrand to some extent now. But, some DPS builds have pretty easy access to boonshare. Easiest example of this is Power Alacrity Renegade, Power Alacrigade for short. Just by going full Diviners and changing Lasting Legacy trait to Righteous Rebel, it can provide full Alacrity for 5 with a press of a button. Since having 2 healers for 3 DPSers is kinda overkill in most scenarios, these days parties will have a DPS bring either quickness or alacrity, unless using classic Chrono comp, which has healer provide might and fury while Chrono provides quickness and alacrity. Though Kitty has a secret to share but people don't want you to know, you can use heal Chrono with 4 DPSers who share some might between themselves and bring their own fury. Heal Chrono and 4 Scourges. You heard it here first. Anyway, so, Power DPSers can use Diviner's gears to share boons at moderate cost, and Condi DPSers can use recently added Ritualist's gears to share boons at low DPS cost. Kitty will probably make build-specific videos on these if this video does well and she doesn't get too much hate mail, again. Peoples, bullying isn't nice, and Kitty already went through almost decade of that during school years. Kitty might also make a video about more specifics on how squad compositions work. And other videos. Leave video suggestions in the comments below and press the thumbs button and red subscribe button and bell if you want to get notified about new videos. But there's still 2 more stats to mention. Vitality, which increases health pool, and toughness, which protects against power damage. In open world and in world versus world against power builds, toughness can be useful to reduce incoming damage but only as a healer or Condi DPS, since Condi DPS only loses 10 to 20% DPS at most by using tanky stats instead of power plus precision. Classes with Condi on crit traits suffer the most from not using Vipers. However, toughness is undesirable on power builds and especially in raid situation on all builds, except tank. On power builds, toughness is directly off from damage and thus pointless unless you're tanking on power DPS, support, and even then you want to keep toughness to minimum. The reason why toughness is so bad in raids is due to certain bosses choosing player with highest toughness as tank. Aggro ping pong and DP Sirs taking unnecessary damage is bad, even more so on any power DPSer using Scholar runes. Extra health from Vitality may sound tempting but ultimately it can make you die easier, as weird as it sounds. Why? Bigger pool needs more blood to fill. If you trade damage for Vitality without increasing your healing capability, you just take longer to die if enemy does relatively more damage than you. With pure DPS, you could have killed the enemy before it had enough time to kill you. In this regard, if you want to increase tankiness without losing much damage, go Condi and use either Trailblazers or Dire with Condi duration stuffs if your class only does 1 to 2 Condis. Plague Doctors also comes with some healing power and boon duration, which is why it can work for hybrid Condi support. Shamans gives vitality, condition damage and healing power and can thus work in open world since it both adds bigger pool and increased blood supply while allowing almost full Condi duration on stuff like Condi Firebrand. Also, many classes have some heal for % of damage done trait which heals you when you do damage, and usually these traits have quite minor DPS cost. Good example of this would be Thief's Invigorating Precision, which is 10% DPS loss for semi-god mode, even after it was nerfed when End of Dragons launched. Scrapper has that trait built in. Using such trait is better and easier way to increase your sustain, and Kitty even recommends using DPS build with that kind of trait and strength sigil and might on crit, food in open world solo gameplay. She personally does so as well. If you don't know what are good runes and sigils for your build type, Kitty recommends using Snowcrow's builds as template to build on. Last question. 3. Why? Why are you creating this build? What does it do compared to alternatives? This is one trap that Kitty sees lots of people fall to when build crafting, especially for squad gameplay. A good build has a purpose, and in squad gameplay, it needs to do at least the basic things its alternatives do. Good example of this is Kitty's usual off-meta memory. She often likes to play quite weak builds compared to meta versions, but she always compensates by playing it at greater efficiency than other players in the squad play their meta builds, and her memes still do the required things. If you decide to play off meta, you need to play it better that other players play meta to get same result, and if both players play their builds with percentage of mastery, the one whose build has lower ceiling will always be inferior. For this reason, if you want to meme around, do it in squads where people are chill about you doing less DPS or where you outperform rest of the squad enough to compensate. To be able to compensate, make sure you master the fight and the build before joining the squad. Also, one thing to never do: don't play weak builds in meta-centric high-performance squads. That's the easiest way to get kicked, blocked and kicked again. Kitty's probably on some block lists for that reason, as she's accidentally done so before when squad was actually a speedrun static looking for LFG fill. Kitty's usually left the squad voluntarily if she noticed she was a deadweight. This is even more important for healers. Unless the DP Sirs in the party are specifically bringing the boons, healer is expected to provide boons. Third healer for damage-intensive fights is pretty much the only exception if other two healers are already bringing the boons. Even then, it's preferable that third healer does the booning job that a boonbot DPS would do in two-healer squad. Also, healers often do special mechanics. Druid is the pusher of choice in most scenarios, but for example at Samurag, a healingy can use personal battering ram and blast Gyro or force signet. Guardian can use Hammer's Banish, Tempest can do the same with Lightning Hammer. At Keep Construct, Heal Chrono can use Greatsword to push, and Healingy can use Flamethrower for same purpose. You probably get the idea. If you can't do the mechanic as a healer, make sure some DPS can do it, preferably without too big DPS cost. But then, when it comes to booning, there's one big misconception Kitty sees all the time. Heal Scourge. Can. Boon. It brings might natively with torch and regeneration with staff. But here's the big support secret that might sound a bit racist, but if you're a Char, you can bring Fury on any healer. Though not on Revenant. Char's Battle Roar gives 12s of Fury at 100% boon duration and Pack Runes give 16s. Pack Runes give 53% Fury and Swiftness uptime natively, and Battle Roar gives 43% uptime, which totals to 96% uptime with Alacrity, and that counts as pretty much perma Fury in most cases. Besides, many classes bring their own Fury through traits or rotation natively. Though some, namely Power Reaper, will cry if they don't get Fury. If you can't give Fury, throw Power Reaper to other sub. If their healer can't give Fury, let the Reaper cry. Yush, Kitty's Ebel. But so, as a recap, choose weapon that fits the role. One with big damage number for power DPS, one with red icons on skill tooltips for Condi. One with healing and orange icons for supports. Choose suitable traits for the role to create a synergy. Use suitable stats, runes and sigils in gears for the role. If all those work well together in your build, congratulations. You have a decent build. But that's probably enough for today. It's been a very long video and probably took long time to edit, writing a script, doing all the video stuffs, etc. So leave a like if you liked this one, and Kitty might make more theory videos in the future. Leave video suggestions in the comments below if there's anything you'd like Kitty to talk about, and last but least, subscribe to hear about future videos ASAP. Also feel free to join the Discord in the description. Kitty will buildcraft and theorize there, and maybe do some raiding there, testing memes and stuff. But thanks for watching, have an able evening, and meme you next time.